I have read a lot of the story, and there are some definite heartbreaking stories that sadden me to read them. My story is also pretty sad, but I do not think that I am able to convey the same level of bitterness and betrayal that some of the other writers and submitters have experienced. My story, of course, is sad but also perhaps gives a different perspective that might be worth listening to. I am not sure why I am writing about events that took place so many years ago, but maybe it is just a way to show people that good things happen with time. And time and patience does seem to heal most things. I know this is a long post, but I think the history is important to know so people understand what happened. And that generates my question and request for advice. Based on this, am I crazy to try this again, and is it worthwhile at 60 years of age? I met my wife, and we were together for almost 10 years, which includes 7 years of marriage. We have 2 children who are now fully grown and have lives of their own. My wife and I met on a blind date, and it was awkward the entire night. My wife is an attractive woman with a vivacious personality. Me, on the other hand, am somewhat reserved and would not probably be considered as a head-turner. I am not that bad on the eyes, but do not in any way claim to be a great heartbreaker. I am also on the quiet side, and my wife always has been the person that people noticed at a party or an event. She also has a kind heart and is very empathetic to people and always looks for the good. Strangely enough, she seemed to like me and our relationship grew. Finally, we got married and began to build our life together. Our life was actually going very well. We had a nice home, good finances, supportive families, good friends, and our kids were doing well. But, as with many of these stories, there is a catalyst that can change everything. Our catalyst was a pregnancy. We had 2 young kids at the time and wanted to go for a 3rd child to have an even larger and happier family. We never had too many concerns in the bedroom, and we quickly had number 3 on the way. I was elated when my wife told me the news, and we waited about 3 months before we told the rest of our families about the new addition. During the next 3 months, we were busy with planning for the nursery, working with our kids on getting ready for the new baby, looking at finances, etc. It is perhaps the saddest day of my life when my wife called me to tell me that something was wrong with the baby. We got her to the hospital, and unfortunately, and tragically, my wife had a miscarriage at the 6-month mark. We were both traumatized, and the trip back home next day was absolute silence and sadness. My wife went to bed that night and did not come out of that room for the next 3 days. She was absolutely overcome with sadness and depression. For some reason, she also believed that she had failed me as my wife. I told her again and again that this was an act of God. She did not do anything wrong, and we could try again when the time was right. But she did not believe me and still continued to blame herself for the whole situation and sunk into a depression. It took about 6 months, but she appeared to be coming out of her funk and seemed to be getting back to her normal self. We were both doing well with the kids. She seemed to have her personality back, and we were talking about the future. She also started to exercise and get back into shape. She really did look incredible, and I did enjoy giving her compliments and telling her how much I loved her. During this time, she also talked to me about getting a part-time job. It was not so much about the money, but more of a way for her to get out of the house and stay involved. I told her that was a great idea and encouraged her to think about what she wanted to do and to go for it. To my surprise, she got a job as a waitress and bartender at a restaurant right down the street from us. She has a degree in business but did not want to get a white-collar job. She thought the hours and responsibilities would be too much with our home and family, but this would get her up and moving. She would be able to earn some money for herself and feel like she was contributing. Plus, she said that she needed to work and talk with adults, and she felt this would get her out of her isolation at home. Once again, I told her that was great news, and she should go for it. Now, I noted earlier that my wife is an attractive woman. I should also add that she is a voluptuous woman and was looking really great with her level of fitness and weight loss. She has never had a problem with attracting interest from men, but she also has always been loyal to me, and I never had reason to doubt her. She started her job and was doing well. She worked 2-3 nights per week and usually worked on a Friday or Saturday. I was somewhat uncomfortable with her work outfits because she wore clothing that accentuated her figure. It was tasteful, but I admit that I wished she would be more conservative. She laughed at me on this and told me it was a great way to bring in more tips and perhaps her outfits would spur more romantic interest on my part. The owner of the restaurant was a good man and ran a good business. He was fair with his workers and his family also all worked there. His son, to be honest, was somewhat of an arrogant jerk. He had been born into wealth and made no bones about living a nice lifestyle. He was about the same age as my wife, and I must admit he was a very good-looking guy. He was married but had no children yet. His wife is a lovely and wonderful person also. She also worked at the restaurant and handled the books. The son handled all of the catering and special events. At least, he was supposed to do that. My understanding is that he was somewhat lazy and constantly dumped his responsibilities off on his family and coworkers. What he really liked to do was lift weights, work out, drive around in his fancy car, live off his family, and basically talk and brag about how great he was with women. I am not sure how his wife dealt with all of this. He was admittedly a flashy guy, but the guy did not impress me in the least. I could tell from the first time I met him that he was not much more than a big mouth windbag. My wife several times had commented to me several times that the guy was very good looking in an exciting way, but he was an arrogant toe rag, and she could not stand him. But she had to work with him and kept her mouth shut to get along. She did work with him on a consistent basis, and they then began to have some type of friendship forming. I was not overly concerned but did tell her that this guy was trouble, and she should be careful around him. During the next several months, my wife did begin to act peculiar. She kept a close eye on her phone, claimed she had to work late, and began to be absent for long periods of time, claiming that she was shopping or was running errands. She also began to ignore me to some extent, and I also thought she was not as attentive to the kids as she had been in the past. My wife is a good mother, but she seemed to be impatient at this time and had no concern with turning over more of the responsibilities to me. It was a challenge since I also work full-time and am the primary breadwinner of the family. I did tell her of my concern, but she told me things were going okay and I was seeing problems where there were not any. One night my wife and I were alone, and it was fairly late. I made a move on her, and she shut me down cold. I asked her what the problem was, and with that she started crying and shaking. I asked her what the problem was and then received the shock of my life. My wife told she had been seeing the owner's son for almost 6 months. The relationship had turned sexual. She loved him. We were done, and she was going to leave me to move in with him. She also told me that she had been deeply unhappy since the miscarriage and felt that something in our marriage had died. She needed a fresh start and she needed to be free to live her life. She also told me that she loved this guy, and he could make her happy. I was obviously pretty shook up and asked her to reconsider. She told me it was too late for that and would be moving in with her new boyfriend into an apartment they had secured. I asked her about the kids, and she told me that it would be best if they stayed with me in the house to maintain a good home and she would be there to see them. It is an understatement to say that I was absolutely shocked and flabbergasted at what had taken place. My wife told me that she did not understand the surprise since she thought I was well aware of her unhappiness with our marriage and the miscarriage had been the final nail in the proverbial coffin. I was not pleased when I learned who she had a relationship with. It is one thing to get the complete shafting from your wife, and another to find out she was ditching you for a guy who was really a dirtbag. I do not want to make a generality, but there does seem to be some truth that so many women are attracted to guys like this. I am not sure if it was his looks, flashy lifestyle, or his big mouth, but she apparently was interested in him and it took off from there. I was also shocked that she had been involved with him for 6 months without my knowing. They apparently had been having sex in his car, the restaurant, hotels, his house, our home when nobody was there, etc. It was a real betrayal, and I was deeply hurt. But I thought about what I would do and maintain my perspective and composure. What followed was several weeks of tears, sadness, cajoling, and really just a whole lot of crap. My family, and especially my dad, was furious and began saying terrible things about her. My wife's side of the family was also upset with the situation, but did not display the same level of animosity and bitterness that my side did. I actually had to intervene with my father and ask him to stop with the vitriolic insults against my wife. She was still the mother of his son's children, and he needed to show her respect as a grandfather. My father actually agreed and commended me on my approach to this whole situation. I told him that I did not believe there was any benefit for me by seeking revenge on my soon-to-be ex-wife. She was the mother of my children, and I would need to have an amicable relationship with her for the sake of our kids. Do not get me wrong. I would have loved to be in Saab but thought long and hard about it. I think that I made the correct choice and in retrospect would have done the same thing. As I said, it was a rough couple of weeks, but she did move out and into an apartment with this guy. She did see her children and tried to be active in their lives. I also felt terrible for the wife of this guy, and she was mortified by what had taken place. She did leave the restaurant to get another job and did file for divorce. I would see her in the local grocery store on occasion and always wished her well. She was originally from Pennsylvania and eventually moved back to her home. I understand she did get remarried to a solid man and now has a good life and children. I wish her only the best. There is no question in my mind that her splitting with this guy is the best thing that ever happened to her.